So I want to talk about creating relationships, not surveys. This is actual feedback to a survey I wrote. I work for the Schwan Food Company, and I work on a direct-to-consumer business, which means I do surveys directly to my customers. They don't get any incentive. I'm certainly not the only company doing this. This is just a handful of the companies that ask me for feedback during a 30-day period. So we see this happening more and more. So I've been in market research for quite some time. I've written many surveys, worked with suppliers to write many surveys, yet still, according to my customers, I'm maybe not as good at my job as I thought I was. So I've had to flip my thinking in the past year and a half about how I do surveys and how I work with my customers, because it really is about a relationship between us, between them, and Schwan's. In the past, I really focused on what are my objectives, what are the research objectives, what does Schwan's want to know and learn? And now I really need to think about not only what does Schwan's want to learn, but what do my customers want to get out of that survey experience as well? Because they have their own objectives and goals. This journey all started a little over a year ago when I was told, hey, you'll get a better response rate if you more personalize your invitations to your surveys. So I started adding my name, my title, my email address at Schwan's. Sometimes I even included a photo. So again, beginning to establish that relationship with my customers. And needless to say, when you include your email address, then people can communicate directly with you. And they did. Some of it was really great, happy, love for our products, for our service. And of course, probably more of it was complaints, negative things, maybe something that wasn't going well. Could have been product or service, but generally if someone wrote to me about a survey, it was to complain about the experience. As you've seen, this is just a hint at some of the messages I would get back. It kind of came to where if I was launching a survey on Friday, I kind of knew what I was coming into on Monday morning, all of the complaints about what they didn't enjoy. So I've had to adjust. Some of the first things I had to learn to do is if someone's taking that extra time to write to me personally, to give me feedback, good or bad, to just say thank you for that feedback. What an honor for someone to tell you when you're not doing a good job. And then as we think about relationships, often the best way to repair any relationship, whether in your personal life or for our companies, is to apologize and say, gosh, I'm sorry, I hadn't thought through how you would feel doing that. I've also had to develop processes to work with our customer care professionals. Sometimes customers send me feedback about things I maybe can't personally address. Maybe it's just that they've changed emails, so we need to update their email. Maybe they had a service issue that we need to correct. So I now know how to get those messages to our customer care team so the professionals can take care of those for our customers. And again, maintain that great relationship. One of the top ways my customers wanted to tell me I was not doing a good job was that I wasn't respecting their time. The first way I wasn't respecting their time was reminder emails. They're very quick to point out to me, you know, I saw your first email. If I'd wanted to respond to you, I would have done that last week. You don't need to send another email to me. Even worse, what was happening when I was sending reminder emails is this was the most likely opportunity for a customer to say, okay, I've had enough. Not only do I not want any more surveys from you, I don't want any marketing emails from you. So that's about the worst thing that can happen. Here as a researcher, I'm compromising our ability to market to a customer at all. That is entirely unacceptable. So I no longer do any reminder emails. Not surprisingly, length of surveys is a top complaint of customers. I now try to keep all of my surveys to about 15 questions is a good length for customers. And of course, it's not just survey length and number of questions, it's what type of questions are they. So there are certain ones that take way too much time and that customers don't like. Matrix questions are certainly at the top of the list. How do you keep those out of surveys? They slow people down, they don't enjoy them, they're not mobile friendly. Ranking questions would be another thing I no longer use in surveys. Open ends I still use, but being very choiceful and generally limiting an open end to 1 per survey. Here's a specific example where I did kind of not respect people's time. I had a situation where I wanted to understand the life cycle of Schwann's vanilla ice cream. And I know from our transactional database if you've purchased Schwann's vanilla ice cream and how recently, and that there's a good chance it's still in your freezer. So I sent out a survey trying to get some additional information from folks, but I also needed them to go to their freezer and look up some of the manufacturer date and other things off the packaging. What I had not thought through is that most of my customers were taking their survey at either a desktop or laptop computer. They got up, they went to their freezer, they got back, they put in the information, they went to the next question, and now I was asking them to go again to their freezer. This was unacceptable in every possible way. Pretty much everyone stopped the survey at this part and refused to go any further, and those kind folks who gave me the opportunity of some feedback were very clear to let me know kind of how disrespectful this felt. I ended up having to scrap that entire survey and start over from scratch. Get really clear. What's my number one objective? How can I design this so I'm asking people to go to their freezer 1 time exactly? How do I get rid of any nice-to-have questions to make the overall activity as short as it can be, knowing that that trip to the freezer takes a fair amount of the time people are willing to give you to give feedback? Another challenge in my surveys is I often thought I kind of had all the possible answers. So as I was designing multiple choice questions in particular, I would think I kind of knew all the ways you'd possibly want to respond. But according to my customers, that was often not the case. Often there was something they wanted to tell me and that wasn't an option, and they didn't appreciate that. I now deal with this in several ways. Often they'll be a not applicable, even though you'd think someone might have opinion on how satisfied they are with something as a part of your business. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they just don't have an opinion. And being asked to give an opinion when you don't have one makes people kind of feel like they're lying to you. They're making something up. Much better to let them just say they kind of don't have a thought on this particular question. For multiple choice in particular, it's been really important to make sure I absolutely always have an other please specify, even when I think I know every possible answer. And I see a couple things happen when I have this as an option. One, some people put an answer that I kind of thought would have classified as something else I wrote. Two, some people actually interpret the question in a totally different way, and that's why they want to answer something else, which often has its kind of own insight that they were thinking about this issue in a totally different way than how I was thinking about it. I also recently had a situation where I was doing a number of surveys to my digitally acquired new customers. And it was all about their kind of experience joining Schwann's. They saw digital ads, they came through our website, and I had a number of questions to understand all of this. And it turns out from the other please specify, I found out I had some biases I had written into the entire survey. And what I hadn't realized is that there were some entirely offline behaviors that were influencing all of their digital behaviors. And had I not had this as an option, I would have missed a key part of understanding their digital journey. Another thing that I've changed how I do is I very rarely force response any of my questions. Again, another thing that's really annoying to customers. If they want to get through, if they want to skip a question, they want to be able to skip a question. So yes, there might be some holes in the data, but again, if your goal is the relationship first and your research objective second, then that's the right answer. Not respecting my customers' privacy is another huge complaint. And usually demographic questions were the main culprit. I mostly now actually exclude demographic questions from my survey work. If I do include them, it's very choiceful to just a couple that are really be key to the analysis, and those still need to be optional. And there always needs to be a prefer not to answer, and I always have customers who will choose the prefer not to answer for those demographic questions. One of the final key things is really how do you make sure in every survey that your customers can talk about what they want to talk about, not just what you want to talk about. And that's really important to my customers. So every single survey I do ends with the same question. Is there anything else you would like to tell us? Generally, with every survey I do, about 30% of my customers have something else they would like to tell me. Some of that is not related to the topic at hand, because maybe the topic at hand isn't what they wanted to talk about. But it is also great for me to be able to keep up with that, because those comments that aren't related to that particular survey tend to mirror some of the things you see in social media, the types of calls you're getting into customer care. It helps to keep me on top of what are kind of the delights that are happening in the business and what are things that are challenging people. This is actually also an opportunity to learn additional things about the survey at hand. I recently had something about our chef collective, and I had people looking at content videos, print recipes, and kind of, asking some questions so I could get some metrics, telling me what they thought about each individual piece, and they each saw kind of 3 random pieces. But it's when I got to this question that I kind of got the insight that pulled the entire study together. So sure, each piece had some good things, some bad things. Here, how they rated against each other. But more importantly, some of my customers took the time to point out to me, here over at X is what I think about Schwann's for. But this content you're showing me is over here at Y. It doesn't quite connect to your brand. And that's a really powerful insight to bring back to the marketing team that, sure, this content in and of itself is fine, but it's not laddering to the brand. And how do we make sure that happens? And after all of this, I now occasionally get it right. Thank you.